wrong.
I'm recording now. That way I'll have it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I'm good to go. Let's see, we've got 20 participants and it's 7 o'clock.
And this is a large group. There should be about 60, 65 maybe, somewhere thereabout.
Yeah, we'll see how many we get. All right, let me delete some of these emails from Seth.
Hey, Sharon. And we'll talk soon. You're on my list, so you'll be sending work to me soon.
All righty. I think I have out up my email here. Make sure I hadn't missed anybody or anything. It's 7:01. They're still chiming in.
Okay, there's
6. We'll go another minute and then I'm rolling.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me get something to write with.
Jeannie, hope everything's well at home. We're praying for you. Glad to see you tonight. Hope things are good. All right. Well, okay, let me send this. Dr. Stedman, can you forward a link? Let me see. Let me see if I can do it right quick. We've got one that says she's not getting it.
Okay. I've got two laptops up, so I can do whatever you need me to do.
Her email popped up. Thank goodness. I just forwarded it from my phone. Hopefully she'll have it. Let me see who. Let's see. Oh, let me see if I can. What was yesterday? May 30th. Okay. Let me see. Details. All right. Let me forward another one, and we'll be ready to roll. All right. One more minute. There we go. All right. We got a lot of questions already. Let's see what these are. All right. My class is being changed. Nobody's class is being changed. Has been changed. Your internship supervisor might have changed from Dr. Hamilton to Dr. Stedman, but you're still in the same classes. On the second one here,
Dr. Lamb, they would have gotten those emails today because I got all the changes. It went in an email and it probably went to the student as well. 697.
It's just 697. That's just your internship supervisor. Dr. Hamilton's not doing with us this summer. Dr. Stedman's with you, so there's no changes in your class. And on the team, y'all can use my shell to work with. You don't have to be in the same class to work. Has joined our team. I can't see what that section is. C6. I believe that let me see what section she's in. I'll write that down, but I think I believe she is in that. I believe she is in. If she's not in, if she's in C2, still C6, y'all could just use my intern shell to work with her, or you can use Dr. Stedman's. Either one. I'll make sure. I believe I made sure that she's in both of our shells.
Right.
That she's in both of our shells. So you can use either your intern shell or use either Dr. Stedman's intern shell or my intern shell for the folks who have people that are in different sections. No, we're not talking about you, Shelley. It's not all about Shelley. It's not middle school. That was ugly, wasn't it? Me. All right. Let's get started. Welcome to MELS 603 Town Hall for the add-on licensure folks for the summer of 18. The purpose of tonight is to go through all the evidence artifacts that are due this summer for you folks. I thought we'd just do one big general session and then we'll work with you individually as we go. Please remember you will be putting your work once into your intern shell, into your class shell, or you can put it in an intern shell for peer review if you're not in the same classes, and we have a couple of those cases. You put your work in, your instructor will read your work. If your work's fine, they'll tell you it's fine. You keep on moving. If it's not, they'll tell you to put it in your internship supervisor shell. And there, your internship supervisor, or what we call clinical coach, will work with you. They work with you on the coaching part of it. So there's no need to put it in all shells. Just put it in your class shell. If things are good, you keep rolling. If not, then your coach will work with you. The reason why I'm having this meeting tonight is you've got 9 tasks due in 10 weeks. We're already 1 week in, and so please remember that by Monday you need OMA tasks 1 and 2 in Blackboard for review by Monday, June 4th. That gave you actually a couple weeks to work on the OMA task 1 because task 2 was a copy and paste. For those of you who don't remember, OMA task 2 is simply the first 3 tasks of the APTEL, and take the APTEL labels off, put them together, and you're good to go. Questions? Your clinical coach is Pickard, but she can get in that shell too. If she can't, I thought I made sure last night that she could get in that shell. I might have put her in the wrong shell, but it's okay. She can be in more than one shell. Okay. I'll make sure she's in that shell with y'all. All right. Okay. I'm going to do a quick review of task 1. We need to, quick review of task 1. The things that you really needed in task 1 were your master schedule, your duty roster, your supervision schedule, all the information from your report card in terms of your academics, your attendance, teacher quality, all those things, and then all the demographic information about your school and community from your SACS report, advanced ed, or it's also the first section of your school improvement plan. Talks about the average income, the jobs, the gender, the racial profile of your community, all of those kinds of things. That's what you need. We're going to use that information when we get to task 3. All right. Task 2, as I told you, is simply you can read all the directions and all of a sudden you're going to say, I remember all that stuff. This is task 1, 2, and 3 of the APTEL. Take the APTEL labels off, slap OMA task 2 as a header, and you're good to go. And you're done. All right. So that brings us up to OMA task 3. Now that you've gathered all this information together, you've got all this information about your school and your community, what everything looks like, you know what your staff development plan is going forward. Now we're going to have you assess the procedure that put together your master schedule. Now, the biggest mistake that you can make is to assess the master schedule itself. That's not what the prompt says to do. The prompt says scheduling procedures. Now, there are 5 parts to those procedures. They are listed underneath that bullet there, but I'm going to go through them and make sure you understand the order that they must come in. The first one is federal law. The second one is state law. The third one is local board policy. The fourth one is best practices from your school improvement team findings. And the fifth one is teacher input. That's the rationale for how you put together a schedule. That's your scheduling procedure. Scheduling procedure is federal law first and federal programs. That's why we had you assess those and what your students were supposed to have through those programs in task 1, because now you can look back and say, okay, so that's where we start. We start with federal money, federal programs. Then we go to state laws, and that's planning time, duty-free time, class size, number of days, number of hours, those kinds of things. Those are your state laws. Then your local board policy, like how many minutes of this, how many minutes of reading, how many minutes of math, whether it's a block schedule, 90-minute classes, whether it's an AB day schedule, whether it's a 4-and-1. I ran one of those. I was reading a task last night, and they were talking about reading a task 1 last night, and they were running a 4-and-1, where they run a block 4 90 minutes and then 1 50-minute. I saw somebody last night still running that. That's a good schedule, by the way. I prefer that schedule for high school. And so 4 is best practices. Now, that best practices can be research-based. It could be recommendations from your school improvement team. But best practices is smart ideas for your school. Teaching reading before lunch. That's a general best practice. In particular schedules, like in a block format, don't do a triple lunch shift. Those kinds of things, recommendations from your school improvement team and best practices. And 5th is teacher input, evidence of input from your faculty. Now, it has to go in that order. That if your schedule's not built that way, then usually things go wrong. The feds want their money back if you misspend it. So that's what you're going to do in prompt 1 of task 3. You're going to assess the procedure. How did those stickies get on that board that translated into your master schedule? What classes taught when by who, and all of those, and for how long, all those kinds of things. Again, the rationale or the process or procedure for scheduling, federal law, state law, board policy, best practices / recommendations from school improvement team, and teacher input. Those are the 5 things that go into that to assess that procedure. Is your schedule maker going that way, or are you having problems with in one of these areas? You don't have enough minutes of this, or you're having problems that your federal programs are being audited and you're not making your head count, or there's a problem with them because they weren't first in your schedule. That's the rationale that we're looking for. And then prompt 2, you're developing a new schedule or a new draft of the current schedule that justifies the changes of the areas for improvement that you said need to be made. Should be graphically presented, and that means charted out like a master schedule, like the ones that you've seen, in a graphic form, who teaches what, where, and when. Or you can use technology like something, but you need, in your paper, you need a graphic. And then
Dr.
you
Lamb,
that to your school leadership and get their feedback.
Dr. Lamb, and you need to be reminded too, with school getting out soon, if you need to get input from the teachers you work with, you need to go ahead and get it now because they'll be gone.
Yeah. If you need, now, mostly what you're trying to find out when you assess the scheduling procedures is, do they have input? Now,
Right.
if you need their input, you better get it now. But more than likely, you need to act, what Dr. Stedman is saying, you need to ask them now, do they get input in the schedule before they leave? You could ask them for input into your schedule as well. But you're assessing all of these. The first 4, and then when you get the teacher input, I would ask teachers 2 things: how much input do you have in the real schedule, and what would you like to see in my proposed schedule? That's the 2 things I would ask in terms of faculty input. But like Dr. Stedman said, you better do it quick. They're going to be gone in 2 weeks. And Dr. Stanley couldn't find them. All right. So that is task 3. Task 4 is the usual, where you will write your competencies. Now, you got 12. You got 12 competencies to write for the OMA, and then you're going to write the other 9 for the skip, just like you did last semester, where you wrote 9 for the APSEL, 12 for the APSEL and 9 for the APTEL. Again, you'll write 12 and 9, and I would probably do them the same order that you did them before. Whatever the 12 that you addressed in the APSEL, I'd address in the OMA, and then the 9 you address later this semester where you do the skip. And you know how to write a competency. You've already done that. If you don't remember, go back and look at task 5 of the APSEL and task 4 of the APTEL if you don't remember how to write your competencies. All right. And here's the state grading rubric with all the standards over here on the left that you will have met if you do this work. We have the North Carolina standards. We have CAPE standards. That's online providers. That's our accreditor for being an onliner. And then we have PESEL standards. That's national standards for school administration. So you can see that's where these came from. This is the state grading rubric. Starts with North Carolina standards, goes through. Also, we have some ISTE standards in there. That's technology. We have CAPE and we have PESEL standards. The grading rubric is decided for us. It's handed to us, and so that's why we tell you there's no modification. We can do some fewer peer reviews or something in the summertime, still do enough to get the effect that we need, but we can't change the actual output or what you're doing because it's graded against the state grading rubric. That was devised for us and given to us and said this is how these will be graded. All right, moving on. Skip task 1. All right, now. The skip is for stakeholder and community involvement. This is your parent involvement piece. At the conclusion of this, you're going to write a marketing plan. Now, If you can't remember stuff, write it down. Write this part down. The whole notion of the skip is to develop more modern methods of communication with your stakeholders, and then capitalize on that better communication with with events at your school that help your parents and your community educate their children. Help us help you. So let me say that again. The whole notion of the skip, what you're trying to do here, is to develop better and more modern methods of communicating with parents and stakeholders for the purpose of, once you're able to communicate and get them on board with you, to provide events at your school that will help parents and community members help their students perform better academically. Things like family math night, family reading night. One of the best ones I've seen was at Northwest Guilford, was a career day sponsored by Vermont, where they brought the freshmen and their parents in, and they saw the sheets on the table that said, this is the job, this is how much it pays, this is the degree you need, this is what you need to do in high school in terms of the courses that you take. This is the grade point average that you need to get in college to get this job. There are students taking advanced courses and how well they did in school. That was a motivational one. Family math night, you actually work with parents and how to teach their kids math. Family reading night, you put books in their hands, those kinds of things. But those events won't be well attended unless you can communicate better with your families. Now, don't try to pull my leg and say, well, we did this event and that event where we just got people to come to our campus. It's the content of what you do with them that's important when you get them to your campus. If you just come for a ball game or for a talent show, that won't help your test scores. But if you can get them there for a family math night, that has potential to impact your academic achievement at your school. I tell the story all the time. During the decade of the 90s, Independence High School won, 9 or 10 4AA football titles. They would have 30 to 40,000 people come to their ball games. I said that's correct. 30 to 40,000 people come to their game that were on their campus. It didn't make their test scores go up a bit. If it was only about getting people on your campus, I've said this 1,000 times, in the western part of the state, we'd have a womanless wedding, and the Piedmont would have a barbecue, and the eastern part of the state would have a donkey basketball game, and we'd kill it if it was just about getting them to come to campus. It's the content of what you do with them once you get them there that's important. So if you can remember that, then the skip becomes really easy, because the first thing that you're going to do, you're going to conduct a needs assessment that determines the gap in communication between internal and external communities. You're going to look at your teacher working conditions survey. You'll look at the parent involvement piece of that to see and look specifically at communication. But you're going to also, you may survey the parents. Each school district has a parent survey that goes out in the spring, most of them do, and they ask communication questions. So you've got two sources of information that may already be there where you don't have to do it yourself. Your district's parent survey for your school, not for the district, for your school, has communication questions on it, and the teacher working condition survey for the internal community has communication. They ask teachers how they communicate with parents. And so if you've got those two things, you won't even have to make up your own survey. You just make sure that you've got your PLC, you do a needs assessment to determine the gaps in communication. Now, I don't want to see needs assessment that you did for something else and you try to pass it off on the ear. This is only about gaps in communication. If I see anything, this is a needs assessment to determine what resources we need, or what academic needs we have. No. This is only about communication. Remember, this is about determining better and more modern methods of communication, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, those kinds of things where you can communicate in a more modern way like folks do. I mean, most people communicate off their phone now, and they never use it as a phone. Finding those ways, where are the gaps in communication with our parents and our community? And what ways could we go about addressing those gaps? All right, so you'll also do a background description of the setting. You've already done that. You did that in the AppSell and AppTel as well. Clear statement of the purpose of the needs assessment. It better be to determine gaps in communication. It better not be anything else. Gaps in communication. That's what we're doing here. A list of the participants who were in your needs, who participate in your needs assessment, analysis of the finding, a set of recommendations that identifies avenues of communication that will be established, and a set of recommendations that includes both short and long-term objectives. The short term is communication. Write this down if you can't remember. Short term are the things you're going to do to communicate better. Long terms are the events you're going to have once you get them hooked, when you get them to school to work with them. Family math night, family reading night, EOG night, EOC night, those kinds of things. This is what we're going to do long term. Short term, we're going to hook them. We're going to get them communicating with the school. Long term, we're going to provide events where we communicate with them in person and transmit information to them that will help them educate their children. Let us help you educate your child. So that one's, if you understand that we're looking for communication in long term, we're looking for events where we can get them face to face and transfer knowledge to them about academic information. You got that one made. And then in prompt 2, this one's really easy. The candidate will lead a team to conduct an organizational analysis to determine the climate of the school. You look at the TWC, Teacher Working Conditions Survey. There's also a climate survey in South Carolina. And those not working in public schools may use appropriate data applicable to the objectives of their assignment. And the whole idea, you're only doing the school leadership section of the Teacher Working Condition Survey. I don't want to see managing student. If I see managing student conduct, I swear I'm going to snap. I do not want to see managing student conduct here. It says clearly, school leadership. You can do that one later when we get to the CAP, but not here. I don't want to see anything but school leadership here. I don't want to see teacher leadership here. We've already done teacher leadership. We did it in the AppTel. Focus on your task. If you focus, these don't take that long, and they're fairly quick and easy to get through. If you remember, don't put a lot of extra stuff in here that we didn't ask for. We're looking for you to assess school leadership in prompt 2 of task 1. And once you have evaluated school leadership, you will use the results to determine the strengths and weaknesses and make recommendations for improvement. Again, background, organizational setting, participants in this particular task or prompt, detailed description of the procedures used for data collection. I got it from the TWC. I got it from Advanced Ed Survey in South Carolina. And then the recommendations, what recommendations are you going to make for your school improvement plan? So that gets that one. Again, I don't want to see anything but school leadership here. If I see anything else, it's not going to go well. I don't want to see professional development here. I see that one a lot. I see teacher leadership here a lot. I see managing student conduct. And I bet if you put PBIS, I swear it's going to go bad for you. This is not the time and the place for this. For some reason, this is the first time you've seen TWC and everybody says, oh, now's the time. No, now's not the time. You got to wait one more. When you get to the CAP, you get to use those, but not here. All right. Task 2. You're going to figure out what it's going to cost to do 3 things. You got 3 sets of recommendations so far, and I hope you remember what those 3 sets are. You got your short term. What's it going to cost to communicate? Do we have to buy some kind of a communication system? I just left a student. I went today, hence the coat and tie. And I saw a piece of software today, and it doesn't cost that much. And it basically does mail. It's an automated system where all you have to do is put a name in it, and it generates notices and information and cards and letters and those kinds of things at the appropriate times. And it generates emails. And I know that email is kind of, last century, but there's other things out there that generally, you can use a WhatsApp, or you can use Facebook, you can use Instagram. What's it going to cost? There's softwares available that will do a lot of communication with parents, that send texts and alerts and those kinds of things. Just like Gardner Webb has invested in one for emergency management system, and I get texts and emails from them just like today when the weather's bad. Let's see. Let me check this. I did that already. Okay. All right. So that's what we're looking for is what's it going to cost to do the communication? What's it going to cost to put on family math night? What's it going to cost for us for the recommendations for improving school leadership? What are the costs going to be on those three things? And then what are the human resources needs on those three things? Sometimes it takes people. Sometimes, you have to find somebody or appoint somebody or hire somebody to be your staff communication director, or how many people is it going to take to do family math night? We need to know how much money is it going to take, and I mean actual dollars, and not just funds, and the people it's going to take to do it. That doesn't mean that you're going to have to hire new people, but who's going to be the person responsible? And I don't want to see teachers, or I don't want to see staff. Staff never did anything. I want to see names of people who are going to do these things. In the real world, if you don't assign people duties, if you just put down, teachers will do it, guess what? Teachers won't do it, because nobody's looking to do extra things. You have to have names and dollars that it's going to cost for three things that you've identified so far. You've got short-term goals on communication. You've got long-term goals on events at your school to help parents help their children. And you've got recommendations to improve school leadership. What is it going to take, money and people-wise, to accomplish those things? So there you go. That's task 2. Task 3, we're going to put our marketing plan together. And it looks just like all the other plans that we've got. Again, the specific activities of our marketing plan are those recommendations for short-term, long-term, and improving school leadership. The recommendations that you made: start a Facebook account. That should be specific, number 1. Number 2, have family math night. That would be your second specific recommendation. Number 3 was something about school leadership. So you're going to have at least 3. You may have more than that. And I want you to use the same graphic organizer that you always use. Now, there's no template for this one. Before you ask, there is no template. You need to make your own. And so I would like for you to use the same graphic organizer that you used for the app sell and the app tell, where it said specific activity, it said person responsible, timeline, resources needed, formative assessment method, summative assessment method, your goal, and then your indicator of success. And let me run through those with you again quickly to remind you. Formative assessment is of the adults. Summative is the outcome. Did it move test scores? Formative assessment, did the adults follow through with fidelity and do what you had planned for them to do? That's your formative assessment. A goal is where you'd like to be. Our goal is to move our test scores this much, but if we move them this much this year, that would be a good indicator of success. So remember, formative assessment is of the adults. Are they doing their job? Are they implementing with fidelity? Summative is the outcome. Assessing the outcomes. Formative is assessing the adults that are working toward those outcomes. Goal is where we want to get eventually. Your goal should be academic related. Remember, all these are about improving academics. That should be your goal. Your indicator of success is somewhere along if you want to go from 60 to 80 You're not a failure if you went from 60 to 65. That would be a good indicator of success. Be realistic in your indicators of success. All right. So you write your plan first, a statement of the purpose of the plan, the strengths of the current school program, opportunities for input, involvement, timeline for implementation, feedback, and then you fill out your graphic organizer with specific activities. Again, your specific activities come from your short-term goals, communication, your long-term goals, academic events, and improving school leadership. That's where your specific activities come, and then you run with them. That becomes your marketing plan. Use the same graphic organizer that you used for the app sell and the app tell to put those plans together, your action plan and your growth plan. And then when you get to task 4, guess what you do as always? You write the other 9 competencies that you didn't write in the OMA. I'm going to stop and look at questions here. What were the 2 other things? What would be an example of, well, look at what school leadership, what the categories are. It's not really an example of improving. You look at the school leadership section from the teacher working conditions survey. It has items on it. And they're, and they can be from very good, 100% agree that they do a good job with this, to 100% agree that they don't do a good job. The categories define themselves. You don't have to define them. Let me see. There we go. Yeah. That's why I said you got to focus on that section from the TWC. If you get off the school leadership section, it gets sideways. You're exactly right. That's a good question. It gets sideways because you start trying to think up stuff. Then it becomes personal, and the principal gets mad. TWC is public information, and the state has defined what areas that they want to see principals be good in terms of school culture. And so you just look at the list, pick the bottom 2. And those would be areas for improvement. AFIs, as we call them in the business. Those would be 2 areas for improvement. Wherever the 2 lowest items are is what I generally would do, unless there's a bunch of low items. Yes. I don't know why we're on that question, but yeah, 1 and 2 are due by June 4th. All right, let's focus on what we're doing here. Remember, I have a weekly schedule that has all the weekly turn-ins on it. It's in your shelves, and everybody's is the same. We're giving you up until the 2nd week to have 1 and 2 in. Then a week later, 3 will be due. So that has not changed. All right. So task 4 of the skip, you will do the other 9 competencies that you did not do when you did the OMA, and that one will be good to go. Again, here is the state grading rubric that's crosswalked against all the standards. And that leads us to the CAP. So all you people who have been dying to do the TWC, especially managing student conduct, I'm going to have to hold you off just a little bit longer here. All right. The CAP is about using the information from the school, from the teacher working conditions survey at your school to try to improve the climate of your school. Now, climate can be measured. Culture is a different thing. So let's be careful about culture. Remember, we're working with the analysis of the climate. School climate, organizational climate can be measured. North Carolina measures it with the teacher working conditions survey. South Carolina uses the advanced ed survey. That's how they measure the climate of your school. Climate is a measurable. There is a metric. Culture's more ethereal. You'd have to be in my doctoral cohort for me to explain culture to you. But climate has a measure. It's called the Teacher Working Condition Survey or the Advanced Ed Survey. That's what we're working off of. And if you don't have one, if you're in a school that doesn't have that, you can just download it and send it out yourself through SurveyMonkey or Google Docs. Because they're not copyrighted, they're free for use. The question is, can you use Title I parent survey information for the skip? Yeah, but I think that's great. Make sure you have some staff members as well. But I think that would be a great group to ask about communication. Actually, we've had that before, but you can talk to teachers or you can use the teacher feedback. Remember, it's internal and external. This would cover your external, some parent feedback. Your internal either needs to interview or survey teachers or use the information from the Teacher Working Conditions Survey on parent involvement. There's some questions there that you can use to make sure that you do in and out, internal and external. All right. So what you're going to do when you get to CAP Task 1, this is as far as we're going to go this summer, you're going to do an analysis of the Teacher Working Condition Survey in these 5 required areas. Now, if you want to add additional areas to these 5, knock yourself out on managing student conduct, professional development, whatever you want to add is fine with me. But you can't use them in lieu of these 5. These are required. And not by me. These are required by the state board. They're linked to the rubric. If you don't use these 5, then you will not pass. You must have these 5. You can add more than 5. There's 12 areas. There are 12 areas on the Teacher Working Condition Survey. And you can add up to all of them if you want to, if you knock yourself out. But you can't say, well, I've got 5, these 5. And if you want to add more, you can't substitute one that you want to put for one of these 5. I hope I'm being clear on that. These will be sent back to you if these 5 aren't present. You look at these 5 areas. Each of them have 10, 12 items on them. Pick at least 1 or 2, but you got to have at least one item that's low from each of these areas that you're going to recommend. Later on, you're going to recommend an activity, a fix, a treatment to try to improve that one low area. You might, if you have 2 that are similar and everything else is high, you might want to pick 2. But the data guides you in this. You don't just pick things that you want. Whatever the lowest item or 2 in each of these 5 areas, that's what you're going to pursue, because that's what the data tells you to do. So you look at these 5 areas, find your lowest items. You develop a needs assessment based on the results. Now that's very simple. You take those items and they'll be somewhere between 5 and 10. If you pick 1 item for the 5 areas, there'll be 5 items. And if you pick 2, there'll be 10. And then you take those exact questions from the Teacher Working Condition Survey or the Advanced Ed Survey, and you SurveyMonkey those back out to the staff. The notion here is they answered well over 100 questions at one time on the TWC. Now you're going to have them focus on 5 to 10. Are these things really bad in our school, or were you just angry at the principal the day you filled out the TWC? That's what you're trying to find out. You're looking for the reliability of that data. If we send these questions back out to you a second time, will they still end up low? And that's what you're doing. And once you have assured yourself that, yes, these items are low in our building, then you're going to make a set of recommendations to try to fix those things. This is a preliminary set of recommendations based on your survey data, your needs assessment. First assessment is look at TWC, find the low items. Then you're going to resurvey those same questions back to your faculty. You better hurry. They'll be gone before long. you resurvey those same questions back to your faculty. Are these things really low? Or were you just angry? Have things, is this really the current state of affairs at our building? If it is, then we're going to make a set of recommendations, and we're going to move forward with trying to improve these areas that you have told us are the lowest at our school. Of these 5 areas, if you want to put managing student conduct in there, that's fine with me. But you can't substitute it for something else. These 5 have to be there. Now, when you get to task 2, and I'll go ahead and just give you a little preview here of where we're going to pick up with this after this one's done. What you're going to do next, after you've looked at your hard data at TWC, you've resurveyed, and you've assured yourself that these areas are low, you've made a set of recommendations to try to fix them, you're going to go out and talk to people about these very same things, not something different. You're going to go ask them, why do you think this is low in this particular area? And what would you suggest we do to fix it? Here's some recommendations that we've made as a group. What do you think about these, and what would you add to them? Now, people say, well, why would you go ask them after you got, if you just go ask them, you're going to get off the wall answers, and it's going to be too hard. Qualitative data is really hard to corral anyway. The set of recommendations gives them a guide for them to give you feedback. Yeah, I think that'll work. No, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you do that? It gives you a guide and kind of corrals in your qualitative data. If you make it open-ended, just go ask them, what should we do? That won't work. You need to develop a set of recommendations as a guide when you go to ask people, this is low. Why do you think it's low? What can we do to fix it? Here are some ideas we have. What do you think of these? We're trying to get staff input. We're trying to get buy-in and ownership here. But you can't just leave it open. You've got to give them some choices. Well, yeah, and then they might come up with some new ones. And that's fine. The classic example here is you looked at teacher working condition survey, and the feedback is teachers don't have enough planning time. And you resurvey that, and they say, nope, still don't have enough planning time. And you say, well, I guess the solution or the recommendation would be to put more planning time in the schedule, but that really won't work. It'll blow up class sizes. And you go out and you talk to people, and they tell you, oh, I've got plenty of schedule planning time. I just never get to take it because I'm always covering classes of people in my team. The solution to that problem is not more planning time. The solution is to hire substitutes to cover classes so that teachers don't have to cover during their planning time. See, that's what you learn when you go out and talk to people. The data, the hard data would tell you just put more planning time in. The qualitative data, when you go out and talk to people, is there's a different reason why I'm not able. I've got plenty schedule, I just never get to take it. That's why you go and talk with people. Sometimes they have better solutions, but you can't leave it open-ended, folks. You got to have your set of recommendations for them to work off as kind of a backboard for them to rebound off of. Yeah, I like that. No, I don't. Maybe we could modify it to do this, or we don't think that would work at all, but this might work in its place. That's what you're doing when you're doing qualitative work. And that's what you do in task 2. In task 3, when you get to that one, you're going to look at vision and mission, school leadership, quality, parental. You're going to kind of put all that together. And then when you get here, you're going to build a school climate, a plan to address the climate of your school, electronic framework for a cultural advocacy and safety plan. You're going to build another plan, just like you always do. But remember, we stop at task 1 this summer, but I can't tell you enough times. I better see those 5 required ones in there. You better not substitute them out. I don't want you to tell me, well, I think this is more important. Don't think. That's not what we hired you for. Just follow the directions. You'll be much better off if you do that. Trust me. I think the number one from the collaborative partners meeting that we had this spring, the number one thing that superintendents and principals wanted us to work on for aspiring school leaders, that means you, assistant principals, number one thing is teach them how to follow directions, written directions. We don't have time to tell them over and over to follow the directions. So that's why that's very important that you follow these directions. All right, so that's what we got to do this summer. All 4 of the OMA, all 4 of the skip. Skip's pretty quick, and then the first one of the cap. The skip goes really fast. Once you get through OMA task 1, which does take a couple of weeks, once you get through that, the OMA goes fast. These are easily doable each task in a week's time because these are not that long. The first one is the big one. Once you gathered all that information for OMA task 1, the rest of it goes really easy. And the skip, there is no big data grab in it. It goes really fast. You just work through your short and long-term goals, your needs assessment, and it goes really quick. All right, let me see about questions here.
Dr. Lamb, while you're going to the questions, please be reminded with the OMA, there is a lot of information in the OMA. So don't look at it and think, wow, this is too much. No, there is a lot of information.
It's just collecting it. It's not like you had to write it.
Right. There's a lot there, though.
There is a lot there because there's a lot that goes into managing the school and building those schedules. There's a lot of things there's a lot of moving parts, and you got to know what they all are. And a lot of what we're asking you to do is to learn about your school, is to make sure that the things that you try to do in your school are appropriate for your school and community and climate. You don't want to pull a Harold. I'll tell you, I'll close tonight. My benediction is, Chase, let me tell you, as big as I am now, I didn't used to always be this big. I played minor league professional golf. I put my clubs down for 3 years while I was at Chapel Hill, taking the classes for my doctorate, my PhD at Chapel Hill. I put my clubs down for 3 years. And then I put them down for 2 more while I wrote my dissertation, 5 years. During my prime golfing years, I put them down. That's the sacrifices you have to make sometimes. So I'll finish my story tonight with my Harold story about not understanding your school and community. Harold was a principal colleague of mine in a western North Carolina district that was pretty poor, and he was in probably the poorest part of the poor district. The furniture industry had crashed back in the 80s, and people who had at one time made a pretty good living logging and cutting wood, that there was no furniture factories to buy it, and they could only sell it for firewood. And so their income went they lost 95% of their income when the furniture factories closed. And so most of them just day labored wherever they could find work. And so the notion was, if you didn't work that day, you didn't eat that night. And Harold was principal at a local school there, a local K-8 elementary school. And Harold decided that he read I don't know that Harold could read. I think somebody read him this study where instead of suspending kids out of school, you would suspend their parents into school. This is when we were on the verge in the late 80s of going to school accountability, performance-based accountability, which became the state ABCs. And what we were all told is if you want kids to, if kids have got to be in school if they're going to learn, try to cut down your suspension. So that was Harold's notion. The problem is that program was started in a middle school Catholic private school in New England with all stay-at-home moms. So it wasn't a big deal if one of them had to come over and stay a few hours at school during the day. In the community where Harold was principal, if you didn't work that day, you didn't eat that night. And so the very first mother that came in was angry, and of course she got really mad when the cafeteria manager asked her not to put her cigarette out in the cafeteria, and they got the big fight and turned over the salad bar, and the news media was there and saw it all. And so suspend mama into school lasted all of one day. Now, that's absolutely a true story. It's somewhat humorous, but it's also sad that Harold didn't know his community well enough to know that you couldn't take people off their jobs and have them come to school. They couldn't eat. They couldn't feed their families. There was not a goodness of fit between that particular program and the school community that principal was in. Now, that's an extreme example, but that's what we're trying to get you to understand is there's a lot of great ideas out there, but has it worked in a school that looks like yours? That's in a community and a population like yours? those programs, treatments, and fixes have the best chance of working at your school. A program is something that you do school-wide. A treatment is when you do it like for a specific group of kids or a grade level. A fix is when you change something in your management routine, like going from a 7-period day to a 4-period 4x4. Programs, treatments, fixes. You're looking for things that have worked in a similar situation to yours. That gives you the best chance of being successful. That's what we're trying. So when you say, why do I have to keep putting this community stuff in there? Why do I have to do this demographics and know about that? We want you to know everything you can know about your school and community, and you'll make better choices about the programs, treatments, and fixes that you attempt in your building. You won't pull a Harold and make the news. So that's what we're covering this semester. Again, I will make sure that this student is in Dr. Pickard's internship shell so that y'all can share in there. Share in your class shell unless you're in a team that has somebody in another class, and you share in the intern shell your work. That will work. I do have some that are in different classes from their team members. That's unavoidable sometimes. So that should work itself out. You got till Monday to get 1 and 2 of the OMA in. 3 will go fairly quickly, and you know how to write your competencies, and so you should be on your way now. I see I've got one last question. I've got 4 more. So the question about changing schools, that's fine. That's not a problem. You can continue there. I wouldn't try to change at this late date. I mean, once you get through with the CAP, you're done with all the new information. Everybody understands that. Once you get through with the CAP, you're done with all the new information. When you get to the SOP, it's just parts of the first 5 that you did. You're putting together your actual school improvement plan from all the sections. The first 5 sections are previous. So it would make no sense to change in the middle of the CAP to different school in terms of the data and what you're doing. As soon as you finish the CAP, you're done with collecting information anyway. I've got a template, you've already seen it, where you just pull different parts of the first 5 that you did to write through the SOP when you get there in the fall. So no, don't change at this stage. All right.
Dr. Lamb.
Yes.
Could you speak with me and Dorothy and Janae after everybody, because we're in the other program, the master's program.
All right. Yes. I will send y'all a link as soon as I get out of this one.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty. All right. Dr. Stedman, thanks for cranking up tonight. I'm going to go ahead and end. I see our time is up. I will see my students in class next Wednesday. Everybody thank you for joining us, Dr. Talent. I will see you all next week. Stop share.
Thank you.